Hello friends and welcome. We need one strap and two blocks today for the practice that we're about to do. And if you see the title and it talks about a stable pelvis and you're like, yeah, but we already did, pelvic floor and corset and outer hips. So, but I still want to go into some more work around that. I think a stable pelvis is incredibly important in our body, knowing how to stabilize. As with any muscle, we want it to be able to activate when we want it to at will, and we want it to be able to soften at will. But if we don't have very mobile hips, right, our hips are tight, then often what happens is the low back takes the brunt of that. If our pelvis is not stable, right, because our hips are tight and so our pelvis is what's moving, our low back often takes the brunt of that. So this pelvic stabilization work, it's got two pieces to it. We want to learn to stabilize the pelvis for the protection of the spine, right? And we also want to mobilize the hips from the stable pelvis. And so we want to learn to separate the two, so to speak. So that's today's work. So go ahead and take that strap where you can grab it. Lie down on your back. Let's get to it. Let's stop talking, Crystal Joy Johnson. I can't help it. I get so excited about stuff. And then from there, just have your feet, instead of full extension, if you don't mind, I'd love you to have your feet, just a little bit away from your buttocks. Don't have them too close, otherwise your spine tends to round, right? Have the feet wider than your hips, whatever that is in your body. Let the knees lean in towards each other. They don't have to touch. And then you can play with the feet. A little pigeon-toed might help the knees soften in a little bit, but if you feel that in the knee joint in a negative way, then just, have your feet turn forward. And, some of you know my asymmetries at this point, but my right shin has a torque in it, so my right foot's not going to pigeon-toe, but my left toe can, So play with what feels right in your body. Close the eyes, tune into the back of your body, right? The parts of it that are against the floor, particularly the torso. So where are you on your pelvis? Right, so the very back of the pelvis, there's an upside triangular shaped bone called the sacrum. Where are you on that sacrum? Are you closer to the tailbone, aka your low back is quite a bit up away from the floor? Are you closer to the upper rim of the pelvis, and is your low back flattening down to the floor? Are you in the very middle of the pelvis? You don't have to change anything. It's not a right or wrong situation, right? We want to know our postural patterns as well. And then tune into the low back. We already started that work just from the base of the pelvis. So now we start to see how the pelvis really affects the low back, right? If I am close to my tailbone, my low back goes up away from the floor. If I'm closer to the upper rim of my pelvis, it's down. And if we're somewhere in the middle of that, and you might lift your hips and set them back down, try to come to the middle of the sacrum if it's available. It might not be yet in the practice, right? And then hopefully there's a little space from the floor in the low back. Hopefully the low floating ribs are gently softening to the floor. Now again, different bodies, different things. If you have to struggle and you're pushing your ribs down to do that, please do not. But some of us flare our ribs because we're efforting in other areas. Notice where your shoulder blades are in space. Is there space between the floor and the neck? Right, a little or a lot. And again, notice how that correlates or is connected to, right, where you are on the back of your skull. If I'm closer to the crown of my head, I have a really big arch in my neck. If I'm closer to my brain stem or to the neck itself, right, the occiput, the base of my skull, my neck is flatter to the ground. So again, without having it be stressed or strained or painful, lift your head, try to set down towards the middle of the back of the skull best you can with what you got right now at this moment. Okay, so we're going to call that our neutral spine. Now that may shift and change as you start to move your body and move throughout class. And that is, yeah, you betcha, right? It does. So neutral is a range. This is where we are in neutral at the moment. Walk your feet back in and leave your arms where they are. You're going to use your belly muscles to hug your right knee into your chest a little bit. Notice that your low back rounds to the ground, yeah? And bring the right foot down. And then inhale the left knee up into the chest. And again, let your low back round. We're not trying to stabilize the pelvis right now. We're noticing that it's not stable. And bring the left foot down, right? And bring the right knee up, hug it in, round the low back down, right foot down, and bring the left knee in. Okay, so now we're going to try and do that again, lifting the knees, but without the pelvis moving. So pelvic floor, outer hips, corset, all your stuff, right? And then bring the right knee up. It might not go in as far, and that's okay. Don't round the low back. And bring that right foot down to the ground. So now we're working with a stable pelvis. Inhale, left leg up. Again, don't round the low back down. Only go as high as you can. And left foot down. One more time like that. Inhale, right knee lifts. The low floating ribs don't flare up. You don't change the position of the neck or the skull. Exhale down. Inhale, left leg up. So the idea being we're moving the leg bone, the femur bone, in the socket, and nothing above it is moving. Now, you might bring both knees into the chest, and working this slightly differently, we've got two options. Neutral, low back, right? So we haven't changed that. The pelvis is still stable. You're going to either exhale and bring your right heel just down to the ground, right from where it is, and inhale it up. Let's do that, all of us once. Exhale, left heel taps the ground. Now, if it feels okay, if nothing changes above your pelvis, the right foot might reach out a little bit. Don't straighten it all the way, please, but it might straighten a little bit that knee, and then tap, and then bring that back in. Now, don't let your hips move, and as a matter of fact, bring your hands on your frontal hip points, right? Have the fingers on the frontal hip points so you can gauge whether or not, or how much your pelvis is moving, whether or not the right hip drops down as the leg moves forward. Check into those low floating ribs, or aka I could say the kidneys. Make sure the kidneys are still full. If you have that body type, you know it. You probably, at least if you've been working with me, right? And go ahead and do one more on the left. And bring that back in. Bring the feet down on the ground and just pause. So that's the idea of where we're headed today. Now bring the right knee in. You can let the low back round for this first part. You're going to take that strap around the right foot, push the right heel up to the sky. Now take both straps into the left hand. Leave your left knee bent for now, please. The left hand has the straps. The right hand, you're going to make an L shape, and the right thumb is going to come in the hip crease. Go ahead and push that hip forward and hold it down to the ground. So we're going to help stabilize that hip, right, with the hand, literally. And we're coming back to this throughout class, so please use your hand. Just do the self-adjustment. It's a really, really amazing tool, right? And then now keep that as you extend the left leg out. Maybe you notice your right hip wants to come up towards the right shoulder a little bit. For many of us, it does. Now, we're going to take the right hand out of that hip crease, but I want you to imagine it's still there. Put your right hand, both straps into the right hand. Left arm is going to come to the frontal hip point of the left hip, right? So now work your left thigh down, left heel forward. And when you move the right leg over to the right, there are two main things we're paying attention to. One, that right hand, imagine it's still in that hip, holding the hip down and pushing the right thigh forward. Two, the left hand on the left hip point, it's not doing anything other than noticing whether or not that hip is moving. If it lifts, you've gone too far, right, for today. And then once you get to where your edge is, the left hip has not lifted, the right hip has not moved up to the right shoulder, right, so that's pelvis stability. Now we're playing with hip mobility. If the whole pelvis moves, I'm not gaining any extra space in my hips. I am merely torquing my low back. Not necessarily in a negative way, right? But it's torquing to make that motion. Bring that leg back up. Now put both straps into the left hand, right hand. That thumb is going to come in the hip crease again. Hold it down, push the thigh forward, and then move over just a couple of inches to the left. You don't have to go far usually. And breathe into that outer right thigh. So normally when we go into this, right, we all tend to lift our hip and then we're twisting. That's a beautiful move if you want to do a twist. I don't want you to do a twist right now. I want you to get more mobility, right, in that outer right leg. Come back up to center. Go ahead and release the strap, but extend the right leg back up into the sky. Now, this time you're going to reach your arms overhead. Grab your elbow points. So I'm pushing my left hip, heel forward, left thigh down. I'm keeping my lower ribs down as I reach overhead. And then we're going to lower that right leg down to the ground and try not to let your pelvis move. The rest of your spine move. And bring your arms down. Bring both feet on the ground. Knees bent. Bring the left leg in. Again, you can round the spine initially to get the foot. That's not a big deal. We'll adjust it in a second, right? And then extend the leg. Now from there, we're going to put both straps in the right hand. Right foot is still on the ground. People really want to straighten that immediately. Don't do it. You have less ability to move your pelvis. Bring the left thumb into the hip crease, that L shape. I push the hip down to the ground. I push the thigh forward to the front of the room. Now, keeping that, extend your right leg out to straight, right? And then we'll exchange. Imagine that your hand's still on that hip. Don't lose that. Both straps, left hand, right hand. The fingers are going to come onto the frontal hip point, the as-is bone on the right side. Now, as you move to the left, don't get so antsy to get over there. Keep the right hip down. Right, that's what that right hand is checking. Imagine your left hand is still in your left hip crease, and go ahead and push the hip down and push the thigh forward more than anything here, right? And I'm not going to go fully in because I've got a fireplace my foot's about to make contact with. Although my left foot is very warm right now. And breathe, right? So hopefully the pelvis, inhale, bring it up, has not moved at all, and I'm gaining mobility in my hip joint. Both straps, right hand. Do you see how we can skirt that work all the time and then our hips don't really get as mobile as they could, and it ends up just being that our pelvis moves? L shape with the left hand, thumb in the hip crease, push that thigh forward and hold the hip down. And again, with pelvis stability, the pelvis does not move. Move your left leg over the right a little bit till you feel the outer left leg stretch and lengthen in some capacity. Soft shoulders, soft jaw. And come back to center. You're going to release the strap off of the foot. Extend the foot back up into the air. Knee can totally be bent. You're going to grab your elbow points, maybe other forearm on top, right? So I keep the length. My elbows reach back, my heel reaches forward, my low floating ribs stay down, and I'm going to keep that stability as I lower that left leg. Before we come up, one mini shavasana. So arms by the side and just pause. Notice what you notice. Feet on the ground, and then bring the knees into the chest. You can round the spine for this. You're going to grab your thighs and rock yourself up. Now, if it's okay to bring the heels back, the shins, cross them, and just come back into downward facing dog, go ahead and come back. If you need to come in another way, then you should totally take care of yourself, right? So from downward dog, right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into plank pose, but hold on, don't go there yet. Here's the deal. I want you to work your thighs up to the sky like crazy here, right? As if your hands were still in the hip crease, pushing the hips, the thighs back the whole time. So inhale forward to plank, heels push back, and the thighs lift up to the sky mightily, right? And inhale back. That way we never go into that curve in the low back. The low back never takes the brunt of this. Exhale, heels back, the thighs lift up to the sky as if something was resisting, like there was a pushing of your hands, pushing them up and back, right? And then up and back. Those thighs are just as important getting you back as they are coming down, right? And again, there's resistance. You can imagine my hands around your thighs, trying not to let you move forward so those thighs stay turned on. And bring that back. Take another breath here. And then go ahead and bring the knees down. Bring your blocks in. And we're going to do downward dog on our blocks. So I like medium. Medium seems to be a really good height for most bodies to do this next piece. But if it feels unstable, drop to low. It's okay, right? And if you have really squishy blocks, be careful. Mine are very, very hard. And so I don't get that cushioning down when I'm on them. So you're going to come back into your downward facing dog. Now, if this does not feel stable, don't do it. Just do an imaginary adjustment. If it's okay to bring the right thumb into the hip crease, push the right thigh back. Your right thigh will go further back than the left, and your hips are not
They're not neutral right now, and that's accurate. Bring the right hand down. If it's okay, bring the left hand, the thumb into the hip crease, or imagine it there. Push up and back, push up and back, and bring that down. Now, bend the knees a little bit. Imagine those thumbs in your hip crease again. Push your thighs back, 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 and gain all that length. Now, as we step our right foot forward in a moment, I want you to imagine the right hand is still in the hip crease, pushing the hip back, right? So take an inhale, and with an exhale, step the right foot forward while the right thigh gets pushed back, so to speak. Right? And so what that does is it stabilizes the pelvis. So instead of us pushing hips out to the side and all kinds of things to come into the pose, right? We're asking for the mobility of the hips to do that, not just to move the whole pelvis in order to make that happen. Now bring your right hand, your thumb, you're getting where I'm going, right? Into that hip crease. I got to come out of it a little bit to get it. And then I'm going to push that hip in and back. My right knee wants to whoop out to the side, so I got to push the inner edge of my right foot down. Take a breath from there. Right, now bring your left knee down to the ground. Keep your right hand in the hip crease for now. Uncurl your left toes and inhale, reach your left arm forward to come up into your low lunge. Adding more stability for the pelvis, traction your left knee forward, right? Even as you keep that right hip in, the left knee tractions forward. We feel a whole bunch of muscles start to turn on and tone. Great. And you're probably still feeling the stretch in the psoas without dumping in, right? Breathing from there. Not the only way to do it, just one way. Maybe the right arm reaches up. Grab the elbow points and lengthen, 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 side waist. Reach the arms back up. And we're going to exhale and do a twist to the right with our arms coming in the goal post. And breathe. Did the right hip move out to the right? Mine really wants to. Are you still tractioning your left knee forward? So we're stabilizing the pelvis, and this time our twist is coming from above, the ribs and above, right? Inhale, untwist. Exhale, bringing the hands down. You're going to step back to downward facing dog. And breathe. So again, as we step that left foot forward in a moment, please imagine your left hand pushing that left thigh back the whole time, right? Inhale, we're not lifting the leg today. And exhale, step that left foot forward, trying to keep the left hip in and back. Bring your left hand into the hip crease. Knee could come down now if you need it to. Push the hip in and hold it down, but push the inner edge of the left foot down to counter that. Bring the right knee down, uncurl the toes. Inhale, reach the right arm forward to come up. And then from there, remember, we're going to traction our right knee forward for extra stability, a little bit more of a stretch in the psoas, and then that left arm might reach up. Other forearm in front when you grab the elbows this time. Lengthen the side waist. Re-extend the arms. Exhale, twisting to the left, elbows and goal posts. Don't let those hips come out of the pelvis come out of alignment, right? The left hip stays in and back. The right knee still tractioning forward. The twist comes from above the kidneys. Inhale, untwist. Exhale, down. One more time, downward dog in this fashion, right? Okay, so when we bring that right foot forward, same idea. Don't let the right hip swing out to the right. Inhale. Right thigh moving back like it's being pulled by my hand the whole time. Step the right foot forward. Now bring that left knee down. Quicker, but the same stuff. Right hip moves in like your hand was there. Left knee tractions forward, and then inhale up into lunge. I'm going to turn this way because we're going to add on a little piece, right? So from there, keep that. Step your right foot out to the right. I hope I did that correctly. I think I was mirroring. Yeah. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to bring your right hand down and lean over. If I'm saying it incorrectly, hopefully it makes enough sense. You know to go the other way and breathe. Oh, high sideways. Woo! And then leaning over, I'm going to bring my block underneath my hand here. Any level will do. And I'm going to reach that top arm overhead, and I'm going to flex that far away foot, right? Now this might be where you stay. We are going to maybe lift the leg, but guess what? We're going to lift it from the inner groin and let the pelvis stay stable, right? So maybe that leg lifts up, maybe not. Push the heel into an imaginary wall. Work the right thigh back to the back of the room. It doesn't go back. It doesn't
move back. It energetically reaches back. They're different. Inhale back up. And then go ahead and bring that knee in. And you're just simply going to come into a lunge with your left foot forward, right? So again, from there, go ahead and find that left hip moving in the back, the right knee tractioning forward, the length of the side waist, and then step your left foot out to the left. Moving into Parigasana gate pose. Moving over towards that side plank variation, but hold your horses, right? And then reach the left arm over. So flex the foot, really stabilize. By the way, this is almost the exact same thing we did on our backs, right? We had the one leg in the air, you remember, before we lowered it? So find that first and then maybe lift that leg. I don't know if you saw it, but my whole hips went this way to make that happen. So I'm going to re-put the foot down, asking that right hip to stay in as I lift. There we go. Much different, right? Much harder. And coming all the way up and bringing that knee down. If it's okay to sit in Vajrasana, right? That's where I have my toes curled under. You could sit on a block. You could keep your hips lifted. Take a breath or two. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to come down onto our backs. So you can move your props off to the side. Oh no, don't have your blocks on standby. Sorry, we're going to use the blocks. If anyone has a bolster, there's a part where I'll tell you you could use a bolster, but if not, we'll make do with the blocks. So for the first part, you're going to go ahead and put your feet on the ground. You just need one block. I'm going to go on the medium level. I would say lower medium is probably sufficient for what we're going to do, right? And then I come down on my sacrum. I'm not on my low back. I'm on the very top of my pelvis, the top of my buttocks flesh. And I feel pretty sturdy here, right? Now, same idea. Put your hands on your frontal hip points. Go ahead and start to extend the right leg all the way out to straight. If you're in pain or the low back feels like it's getting jerked around, pull the frontal hip points up, buttocks flesh down, or go to a lower level, right? And that means you should be on a lower level. My toes are pointing up. My inner groin, right inner groin, is rotating down. So my leg is in a neutral rotation. And hopefully this starts to bring this stretch into the front of that right pelvis area. Bring that right foot back to the earth. Handstand hip points. Don't let one drop down or one jerk up to the shoulder, anything like that. Keep them neutral. That's why they're there. And see if you can extend that left leg all the way out to straight. Again, pull the frontal hip points gently to the head side of the mat. Buttocks flesh gently to the back of that left heel, and hopefully that keeps the low back protected, even as we do this work of lengthening the front side of the body. Breathing. And bring that left foot down. Now here's your last piece of work, friends. You're going to go ahead and you're going to lift your heels, right? Tink. And if your feet are really far forward, you want your ankles approximately underneath your knees, by the way. Don't have them too far to the buttocks or too far forward. Arms down by the side. And I'm going to lift my hips, and you can leave that block there or get rid of it. Either one works. We're going to leave the hips high, right? And now we're going to bring the heels down, and then we're going to lift our heels and bring them down. So you keep doing that, right? Inhale them up and exhale them down. And it's not about trying to get the butt higher in the air or anything like that. What we're doing is we're engaging the back of the legs, right? Every time that we move those heels like this, we have got to engage the hamstrings. Other things too, the buttocks, the glutes are involved in this a little bit too. But we're just trying to strengthen some of those muscles because, you know, they're a big part of pelvis stabilization, hip mobilization. So we're going to try and do about 10 more. And 10, 9, 8, if you see my legs shaking, yep, 7, like crazy, and 6, 5. Cindy Lee says you can do this about 100 times every day and it would be a really great thing. I believe we're on 4, 3, my knees are not going wide, they're not going knock-kneed as best I can, 1, and then before you lower down,
You're going to bring your 2 blocks together on low underneath your sacrum. Right? Whew. Feels good to rest after that, eh? So I want there to be a little extension. This is where you could put the bolster in for my friends who have a bolster. I'm not going to do that because most of my friends I don't think have a bolster. So from there, but I would do it on the bolster in my personal practice. I want you to imagine that there's a block between your shins, right? And you're going to try to keep that, the integrity of that space as if you're pushing into a block. We don't because we're both underneath our sacrum. Arms tee out. And then let your legs move a little over to the right. It's not about getting low, friends. And back to center, right? We're trying to keep that pelvis nice and stable. And the twist comes from the ribs, the bottom of the ribs-ish, the kidney band, up, right, into the spine. And hopefully you're breathing. Next time you go to the left will be the last time. Still squeezing an imaginary block. Put the feet down on the ground. I personally like to lift my heels and then my hips. Gives me a little more room and access to pull those blocks out. Now, have your feet walk a little forward and a little wide and lean the knees in. Arms at about a 45, palms up. Close your eyes. Make any little adjustments, right? You can lift the hips and set them down, the ribs or the head, and then just pause. So this is our blueprint pose. This is where we started. Notice if anything has shifted. Are you still in the same place on your sacrum that you were earlier? Does the sacrum still have the same feeling it did earlier? Your hips, right? Your low back, your low ribs, your shoulder blades, your neck. And where are you on the back of the skull? No judgment, accepting that as where you are at the moment. And that can go either way, just a reminder, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is great. This happened, right? Again, we're just noticing and accepting. That's the practice. Notice anything else from the gross to the subtle body. Yeah, you're at home doing a video, so if you can stay here for a few minutes, I suggest that, right? The nervous system hopefully is starting to really settle in. But if you're on a time commitment, just gently, any motions you want while you're on your back before you come up. Evidently I had a yawn. Hands together in front of the chest. And as we bow our heads in, just sending out a wish that all beings everywhere be well. And of course, we're included in that, so we're wishing that for ourselves as well. Namaste. Hopefully it's making sense and you're understanding that when we can find that stability of the pelvis, our spine is more protected, particularly our lumbar, our low back, and then we can start to get mobility of the hips. If the hips are tight and we just keep moving the pelvis to accommodate, we don't let the hips be any more mobile, right? So be well, friends.